What I want to do in this demo is continue our discussion on how to build the data model for my demo example, and also build some of the based objects we need and the landing objects. But before I do that, I want to bring your attention, and first I'm going to log into the hub. Notice I'm already logged into the hub. I'm using the TRN lab and username training, and this is an empty ORS. So I'm going to start building my data model from scratch. And I want to bring your attention to recall what we said earlier in other demos, because we need that information now. We have two source systems. One that will be supplying data for our customers, and it's a CRM system, and one is a sales system. Let me minimize this. The transactional data is stored in Oracle, so you'll see that I'm going to go back to Oracle, and the course writer has put the data for the transactional source systems in the same schema as our ORS. That's a no-no. In practice, you shouldn't do that, but in this class, it's okay to do that. So logging into Oracle, we are using the TRN lab, and notice that a lot of these tables you are not going to recognize, as it should be. That is our ORS, and if I go way at the bottom, you'll see the ZZ. That is my source system from the CRM, and my source system from sales. The sales system, which I've already defined in the hub, is the invoice summary. The other 6 tables make up the CRM system. Just want to make sure you understand that, because now it's important that we begin building our data model. Now, the data model that I'm using is a smaller example of what you're going to be doing in your labs. I'm only going to choose 2, customer and customers that have addresses. The customers is an ER diagram. It will have some relationship with addresses. For example, a customer can be of 2 types, a person, individual, or a corporation or non-person entity. The address will be a build to or ship to address. So later on, we're going to add relationships to this. A customer can have more than one address. And even though I'm using boxes to diagram this, another tool that I use to diagram based objects is really the circle. So let me draw 2 circles. I am going to have an object for a based object called customer. So let me just put that in there. And I'm going to have an object for a based object for address. Now, those are my 2 objects in my ER diagram that I plan to build. They're not the only ones, because we're going to see that to be able to include one-to-many relationships, I'll have to add an intersection table, etc. But for now, agree with me that the ER diagram on the left is what we're after. The circles are the way that I draw based objects, because they deal more with the complexity of a based object. It is more than an entity. It is an entity plus a lot more, a lot of system tables that you have heard about in the lecture and that I will be showing you through these demos that I'm providing you. So that's our ER diagram. We got to define the objects, and as well as the columns, the data types, etc. This is why I had to go to the transactional data, the ZZ tables, to know where's the data coming from. So now we have our diagram that we're going to implement, and now I'm going to go back to the hub. So I've gotten a little bit ahead of you just to save some time. If you look at the schema, I have already gotten, let me acquire a write lock. I had already acquired a write lock. I will, otherwise I cannot edit. So what does it mean to begin the process of building my based objects, my ER diagram or my data model? And should I build the based objects first, and then the landing objects, and then the staging objects? I've said that I prefer to do it in a spiral fashion. So let's see what the source systems are. I've already defined them. I have the 2 source systems that I have are CRM and sales. There is a third one, admin, which is a special system source system that the hub uses, and we'll discuss that later. But my source systems are CRM and sales. Now I'm going to go to the schema. I have a write log, which means I can create objects. How do you create an object? Well, remember we have a customer and an address. Let me create the customer. Let me create the address. I'm going to right mouse click, add an item, and notice what you see. The item data type, you can create a based object or landing. I want to create a based object, so I will enter that. And what I want to call this is the address. Now, there's a display name, which is the way that the users of the hub will see it. And let me just call that address. And notice when I move away from the field, there's a physical address. That is actually the table name. All the based objects, and there's some columns that are defined by the system and some columns that we will define, but the based object turns out to be a table in the ORS and will be having a lot of supporting tables, history, cross-reference. So the based object itself is very complex. It's not just the entity, but it is the based object itself plus a lot of supporting tables. So the physical table name that Oracle will recognize will be C underscore address. Keep the table space the same, the data and the index, a nice description. And we can keep secure resource or not. I have not explained what a secure resource is, but we can have resources that are secure so that anyone from the outside will not have access to the object. So we can keep it on or not. I'm going to keep it on. There it is. That's how easy it is. Now, there goes the based object. Now notice, prior to this demo, I had already created one for customer. I got a little bit ahead of you, and in customer, I had defined customer already, and I had already added the columns. The full name, from full name all the way to subcategory row ID, those are my columns. Those are what you, the configurator, has to create. Where? From requirements analysis, from data analysis, we were told to have a field called full name, varchar 100, first name of 30, middle of 30, last name. Notice the data type char, varchar, index fields. They will be used for primary foreign key, will be of type char, and by convention char 14. They don't have to be that, but that is the convention that we will use on this. Now notice that I've anticipated a foreign key to some other table, subcategory. I may have that, I may not. In my demo, I'm not going to consider another table for the customer, just customer and address. So let's go to address now, and let's see how I created the columns for address. I select address, click columns. On the right-hand side, notice that the system has created a column called row ID object, and notice that the length is 14. This is a system column. Is that the only column? No. If I click on show system columns, you'll see that there's quite a bit of other columns. The creator date, last update, and there's a very important one that we're going to pay attention throughout our demos in your courseware, consolidation indicator. The consolidation indicator flag and the row ID are very important. They're all important, but these are two that we should keep. The row ID, they should keep in our memory. The row ID object will be used as the primary key for all the records that are stored in this based object, all the addresses. The consolidation is a flag that will transition from a 4 all the way to a 1, depending whether it's a new record, matchable record, merge record, or golden record of a 1. So we'll talk more about that. I just wanted to show you that there are a bunch of system columns. Now, what about my columns? Notice the green arrow on the right-hand side. You can add a column. So you can go ahead and start defining your columns. Address line 1. How do I know what to call them? Again, from requirements analysis. So address line 1 is a display name. Physical name that the system gives is address underscore line 1. So that will be the physical column that Oracle will be assigning. And then what is the data type varchar and what is the length? 50. Now, if I had a lot of columns, I could keep doing it in this fashion. Notice I can add, delete, edit, move up or down. But notice there's a little button here that I can import it. So if you have a lot of columns and you don't want to type it in, if you know where the schema is, in this case it's Oracle, you can log into it from here. And remember that I said that our data columns are coming from the same schema. So let me just type this in. Schema name is TRN Lab, username TRN Lab, and password is ! CMX. This is all written in your lab guidebook. And I'm going to click next. Now, notice Which table provides the columns that I want to import? We got to find one. Well, usually this comes from our transactional source system. In this case, I'm going to choose ZZ address. Remember that all the ZZ tables are my CRM system or sales system. And this 6 here, the customer address, customer category, customer note, subcategory, customer subcategory, that makes up the data for my CRM system. My sales system is invoice. In other demos, I said do requirements analysis, data analysis, so you know what fields are being brought in. So this time, I'm just going to bring in ZZ address, click next, and it's just a short, handy way to avoid me from typing it in. Now, if you look at your lab book, it says bring in most fields. Now, should I bring in all fields? No. You bring in those fields that have been determined to be columns that you want to master the data. So here I do want to bring probably most of them. Address ID, is that a necessary one? Well, based on the requirements, I don't need that one. The address line 1, I've already typed it in, so let me move this down. I've already done address line 1. So let me just do city name, state, and zip code. So out of 5 columns, I'm going to bring in 3 of them. Notice you didn't have to bring all of them. Now, I will finish the data typing here. I need address line 1. I've already done that. And then city name. According to your lab book, follow the lab. We just want to call it city. And it doesn't matter if we call it city or city name. But notice what's going to happen here. You see the physical name? It doesn't change. Even though I changed the display, the physical name did not change. So therefore, if I really wanted to change that, I will delete it and I will add it again. And this time I'll call it city. And as soon as I hit the tab key, the physical gets created city. Now notice this has not been saved. So I can still do this kind of changes. Now what is the data type for city? It is varchar 50. Let me go back and let me move it up because I want it in the same order as to be consistent. I select city and move it up. And there it is. Row ID should be the first one, address line 1, followed by city. And the same thing with state. I have something called state code. I'm going to leave it state code. That's how I imported it. If I delete it, I have to change the physical name. But here's another way to do that. Let's assume we want to leave it state. Since I have not saved this, I can still remove and fix the physical name. Had I saved it, I would have to really delete it and add it. But this has not been saved. So it's still a good time to change this. And state will be varchar2. And then I have the imported field called zip. I want to call this zip10. Okay. And again, notice the physical. Well, I'm just going to, since I have not saved this, I'm just going to append the 10 to it. And this one will be of varchar 10. Now, according to the requirements, I need a few more columns. I want to have a zip 5. So I'm going to add that physical name, and zip 5 will be a varchar of 5. And I'm going to add another column, and I'm going to have this something called a valid indicator to see if it's a valid address or not. And how do I know this? Because I read the preamble to your labs, and that gave me some requirements analysis. This one should be a char of 1. It's either valid or invalid. And since this is address, and remember, a customer can have more than one address, I need a foreign key that will tie it all back in to the parent customer. So I'm going to type customer row ID. The physical name is customer row ID. And in this case, because it is a foreign key that will be linked to a primary key, I must do it char 14. And if I look at this, unless I have made some mistakes, I merely go ahead and save this. And now you have 2 based objects, address and customer. And unless I have made a mistake in typing this in, I think it looks pretty good. And let's look at customer. I had already created customer, so let's just review this. The row ID object, and then full name, first name, middle name last name. Think about this. Who's going to supply data to customer? I have customers from the CRM system and customer data from the sales system. What about address? Who's going to supply data? From the sales system, all I have is one table, the invoice. Let me go quickly to Oracle. Remember the ZZ invoice? I have customer name, bill to, and ship to. So it seems that the invoice or the sales system, which is the invoice table, will provide customer contact information and bill to and ship to address. But the CRM system is not going to provide it all in one table. From several tables, the address table will go to the address for the CRM system. And also customer will be populated from the CRM. So customer data will come from CRM and sales systems and not just one table. So now that I have my based objects, I have to continue with the landing tables. But why don't we go and see our schema viewer now? Let me go to the model workbench, click on schema viewer, and see what we have. Look, we're almost done. I have customer object and address. I am missing a few things. I'm missing the relationships. I'm missing a few technicalities that we'll talk about later. And I got to double check that this is correct, but it looks pretty good. The only thing I can see that I'm missing are relationships and, again, a few technicalities. Now, what's the next phase in my development? Remember that nice, beautiful diagram that I was showing you in other demos that I said keep handy? So here's the customer processing. All right, so if you were to look at where I am, I have just defined the entities, customer and address. I know that I'm going to have to define one because remember, a customer can have more than one address, so I got to figure that out, but I'll do that later. And so my ER diagram is pretty much complete. Now I focus on the landing tables. Let me go back. So going back to the hub, go back to schema viewer, and I've already gotten ahead and created one landing table, LDG sales customer. So there it is. Remember that sales tables, source tables, will feed customer data. But I also realize from the requirements analysis that I will also get customer contact from the CRM, not just the sales. So let me just show you how I would create the landing tables. I would add an item, and in this case it's a landing table. Let me call this CRM sales customer, because I know that customer data will come from the CRM also. And this is for customer. Notice the physical name, that is the table name. If you go to Oracle, that's the table you will be looking for. So here it is. Oops, and I just noticed that I made a mistake. Let me cancel. Nothing was wrong except I did not follow the naming conventions as the lab has us do and the course writer suggests. Let me add it again. By convention, you can call the tables whatever you want. By convention, I should call it LDG for landing, and the source system that's feeding the data here, CRM, and the object data that I want. There it is, much better. So the physical name is LDG CRM, a nice description, and I'm just going to click OK. So now I have the LDG CRM. And now notice the column that's there. Like the based object, there's some system columns. For the landing, if I click Show System, there's only one. Only one of them is required. If you review the lecture on this, you'll see that there's some other columns that we recommend. Last update, create date, and other object. But this is the critical one, column-wise, last update. Let me deselect it, and now there. Now, what do I need? At this point, I need to add the columns that I would do so. To save you the time, I could actually click on Add. Click on Add and add my columns that I need. Or I could go to import them, as I did earlier, connect to the ORS, and import them. At the end of the day, you got to get the definition correctly. Now, I'm not going to finish this right now during the demo. I am going to save it. But what I want to do is go ahead and show you the completed one. It says column settings have changed. Oh, do you want to save this? I'm not going to save it. Let me quickly go to the LDG sales system. I select it. There goes the physical name. I go to columns. And there goes the last update provided by the system. And then the rest of the columns are the columns that we need. So notice the landing table, which will be getting the data from the source sales system, has the columns that are needed. Does it have all the columns? It doesn't need them all, but it could. It doesn't mean that I'm going to use them. So I can bring all the columns only to not use them, or I could be more efficient and only bring the columns that have been determined that will be needed in the hub. So here is customer, customer ID, customer type, address. And notice I have to finish the model. I have to do this for all of the address based object and the customer. But let me go to the Oracle table just so you can see what I'm talking about. You see the ZZ invoice? That is my sales system. Look at the columns, customer, customer ID, and notice it does have the bill to and ship to address. And there's a few columns. The last three that I did not bring in. They're there in the transactional, but you don't need to bring them in. That's a discussion of what is master data. Is master data all transactional or not? But I'll leave that to your labs and your requirement people to determine that. I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, so at this point, I'm done with the base object, address, customer, landing. I am going to finish them completely, but for now, that concludes the demo. I just didn't want to spend the whole time showing you how to do this, but this gives you a feeling for how to create based objects and landing tables. And that concludes this demo.